There are so many great fantasy series to read out there, so today let's see all of those very popular fantasy books that I've read and let's see them tier ranked. We're mainly going to see all of those adult fantasy plus some young adult and middle grade exceptions that I believe are really popular, and hopefully it can help you out to decide if you want to read them or not. And let me know down below in the comments what are the books that you agree the most and those that you really disagree with. And let's start with a very popular young adult fantasy book that is Shadow and Bone. For me, this is a series that I really don't recommend. It's a great entry to the Grishaverse, but to me, the characters, the story, it felt as really lacking. Then we have Babel by Eric Kwang, which to me, it's a favorite. It's 100% a little bit of a slow read. It is fairly character driven. The ability that this author has to craft characters and the stories that really are heart-wrenching, it's fantastic. Then we have The Bear and the Nightingale. I've only read the first book in here, but I really believe it's worth the read. I am hoping once that I conclude this trilogy to pump this series a little bit up, but as of now, this is 100% something worth reading. Then we move to Black Sand. Again, I consider this to be a very solid read. It's fantastically written, it's very political, it has great characters, and it has a plot that really continuously advances, and the stakes are so high, it's phenomenal. Then we have The Black Prism, and although I've only read the first book, I will rate this in worth the read. This was such a great story. It has different points of view, a hard magic system based on colors that was really different, and I was super enthralled to everything that I read. Perfect combination of humor but also adventure and also great characters. We have sadly The Blade itself to be added into the won't recommend category, and this is a book that I did not resonate with a lot. There are different perspectives and I loved one of the three, which is of Glokta. This is a very grim dark book and I think it's not for everyone. I will probably continue with this series, and to me this one had a lot of great character work, but then the plot it didn't seem to advance to me. Then we have another favorite with The Drowning Empire by Andrea Stewart. This is a concluded trilogy. It has a hard magic system that it's really different. It's a great blend between fantasy, horror, sci-fi. It has different perspectives that span across this massive land, and it boggled my mind. I just really loved it. It had some savage scenes, and overall
too much love for this series. Move forward. We need to move forward.
We continue with The Book of Night, which sadly I won't recommend. This is the adult fantasy debut of Holly Black, and it was very promising, but it really lagged in the execution to me. It has shadow magic, which sounds great, but the end result felt as something really bland to me. And now we continue with Crescent City, and this is so hard because book 1 was really worth the read, borderline favorite, but then book 2 is something that I won't really recommend. So I think that overall this will land in a fine status, really leaning to the won't recommend kind of story. Then we have a Circe. It's a favorite. I really enjoyed it. It has a great character that really suffers throughout the whole story, and we'll have her adventures. It's a Greek mythology at its core, and I was fascinated by it. Then we have City of Brass. Again, I've just read the first book, so I'm hoping this to be pumped up, but so far let's add it into worth the read because it's something that really fascinated me. We have this Arabian setting, this Jinn companion, and then going into this adventure, this city of the Jinn. It's widely political, it has different perspectives, and I'm not sure how this story is gonna end, and that it really is something that it's worth the read for me. Then we go to City of Stairs by Robert Jackson Bennett, and to me, I really won't recommend this. I know this is a favorite for a lot of people, but to me it didn't work. I just read the first book and it was a great premise. The execution of that story, it just to me felt really boring, and I just needed to drag myself to read this. So, no.
Okay, strong feelings, I guess.
Then we have Daughter of the Moon Goddess, which is something that it's actually very worth the read. I really enjoyed it. It has this Asian retelling vibe, and we will have therefore a very lush environment. It has lots of tropes that are blended and that I really, really liked, so I think it's worth the read. Then we have Elantris by Brandon Sanderson, and this breaks my heart because it was the first book that I read of him, and it made me fall in love with fantasy, with Sanderson. And so to me, in my heart, it always will have a special place. But then I reread it and I was like, So I will probably add this into the fine, worth the read category. I think that if you want to read Sanderson, it's a good thing to read. But if you don't know what to read out there, maybe Elantris is not necessarily the point to start. Then we have Tress of the Emerald Sea by the same author, and yes, again, worth the read. It's something that it's cozy, that it's fun, and it's very lighthearted, so I really enjoyed it. Then we have The Emperor's Soul, which it's also by Sanderson, and to me it is a favorite. I really, really enjoyed it. This is a short novella. It blends characters that are really compelling, then a plot that has very high stakes, two different types of hard magic systems. I thought it was phenomenal. And Enchantment of Ravens, it's a story that to me, it's 100% worth the read. It's one of those young adult standalones that I believe are really popular and are so for a reason. And this is just so cozy. It has the ultimate autumn vibes. And one of the great things about this story, there's lots of banter between the characters. And then we have Emily's White Encyclopedia of Fairies. And to me, it's a book that it's fine, borderline worth the read. It's really similar to An Enchantment of Raven, so I'll categorize that in the same bucket. But it has the same vibes, but instead of autumn, it has winter from Blood and Ash, which it's fine. This is one of the most popular fantasy romance series that you can find out there. I really started loving this series. I really, really did. Upon a reread, again, I'm just seeing that the writing style, it's not really, really good, or not to me. The plot, it feels repetitive and very predictable. The pace, sometimes like weird, too fast, too slow. Then we have the 5th season, so The Broken Earth, which I won't recommend. It is not for me. It has lots of stuff that I should be liking, but the writing style really wasn't for me. I ended this book really very detached for what I was reading, and I am heartbroken about that. Then we have Fireborn, which it's a top for me. It's a trilogy that it's outstanding. It's political. It has dragons, trials at its core, but there's also the aftermath of a revolution, a society that is trying to resettle again. Then we have For the Wolf, which I think it's a worthy read, honestly. I think it's very underrated, and it is a duology, so it's fairly easy to get into it. There's not a big commitment. There's different types of magic, and although at its core, first book, it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, the story really twists and changes, and I really liked the dynamic between the different sisters here. Then we have Foundryside, which to me, it's also a favorite. I really enjoyed this trilogy by Robert Jackson Bennett. It has a high status score, different characters that are really charismatic, really funny. It has such a vibrant setting. We have a sentient key, stakes that are incredibly high, and also it starts being really fantasy and it really evolves into a sci-fi. Then we have Gideon the Ninth, another book that merges different genres, and it really is worth the read. I've just read the first one, so again, this is one that I'm hoping to be a favorite as time passes by, but this was hilarious. It's weird. It has different houses in space. There are these trials that need to be happening, but you don't really know lots of what is happening, and that's kind of like the core of it. But the characters nonetheless are great, and I really find myself liking this book. Then we have God Killer, which I think it's a fine, worth a read kind of book, but I'll add it in fine because although I really liked it when I read it, I finding myself as time passes kind of like not forgetting the story, but not seeing the story as quite unique. Good Omens, which to me it's something that is again worth the read. It is super funny. I thought it was hilarious and I just really enjoyed it. We have then A Song of Ice and Fire, which it's something that to me is classically a favorite. I really enjoyed this story overall. I'm just, it's not in the top because I'm missing these to be finished. Hopefully. Then we have Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman, and dare I say that this is a favorite. Maybe worth a read. I really enjoyed it. It is a favorite. I really thought it was so cute, so sad, so different to what I was reading, and Neil Gaiman has this ability to just transport you to a place where you see stuff, and I really enjoy this. Then we have Guns of the Dawn, which yes, it's a top. It's from Adrian Tchaikovsky. He is really an underrated author, and this is as if you take a Jane Austen book and place the main character into a war, and the result is fascinating. We also have this pen-pals dynamic, which I really liked. Then we have The Atlas 6, which I won't be recommending. I enjoyed it at first, but then the characters, how they evolve through time, the story, it didn't vibe with me. Although I know this is a book that it's super popular, it got viral on TikTok, so there's lots of people enjoying this book. Project Hail Mary, it's a top for me. Overall, I really enjoyed the writing style of this author, and his personal mark is to create characters that are passing through situations that are really hard, but then their coping mechanism, it's finding optimism with whatever it's happening, and I love that. This book particularly has someone else that just made it perfect for me, and I really enjoyed it. Then we have Half a Soul, which to me it's a fine book. It's something that I really liked. It's a Regency fairy tale story, and the main character, it's so funny, but she is not intended to be funny. Then we have His Dark Materials, which to me is something deeply worth the read. This is a middle grade story. The first book felt better to me than how the story concluded, but overall I really liked how everything was created. House in the Cerulean Sea, straight to favorite. I loved this story by T.J. Klune, and I'm now realizing that I did not add Under the Whispering Door here, but it will be in a fine. This is the kind of book that will give you happy tears. We'll follow a very charming cast of characters, mainly these different children that are magical and that are very dangerous, and situations are hilarious, super cute, and there's growth with the characters, something that you won't forget. Then we have Inkheart, which to me, it's really a favorite. I was incredibly obsessed with this story. It follows the premise of these characters that are able to bring back to life things that they read from books, and I just think that concept in itself, it's a masterpiece. It's phenomenal. Then we have Jade City, which is a top, like no discussion here. I adored the Greenbone Saga. It is phenomenally written. The amount of care that Fonda brought into the creation of these characters is just out of this world. We will follow this urban fantasy story where these different bands are fighting for the control of the Yade, but you will follow one of these bands, these siblings, and you will really feel for them. They are really very well crafted. Then we have The Justice of Kings, which is something really worth the read. I really enjoyed it. It's something that it's a borderline favorite. I was pretty obsessed with this book as well. It has this dark setting which really reminded me to The Witcher, but then we have a mystery that needs to be unraveled, magic that surrounds death. I really believe it's great. Then we have Kaikei, which again, it's a book that I really believe it's worth the read. It is probably not for everyone because it's pretty autobiographic and it's fairly slow, but we will follow the point of view of the evil one and how she is supposed to become that person. And I just felt so much for this character. I really loved it. Kings of the Wild, which I'm not sure. It is a fine. Fine, borderline, won't recommend. It is, to me, overhyped. It's a quest at its core, very Dungeons and Dragons. We will follow these different kind of characters. They just pass through the same story again and again and again. Then we have Legendborn, which is another young adult story that it's really a favorite. This story blends the Arthurian mythology with root magic, and it's just something that it's different. It has this dark academia vibe. 2 books are out, and each book it's great and it's heartbreaking. Then we have Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor, which is a hard, won't recommend. This trilogy was the biggest what is happening that I've read in my life. It started really good. We will follow chimeras and it just this portal fantasy, and that sound like right down my alley. And then the rest of the stuff happened and I was like, we moved to Legends and Lattice, which has been gaining lots of popularity, and I believe it's a book really worth the read. Leaning towards the favorite, it's here because comparing it with everything else that I've read, it feels as if it is not quite a super favorite, but we will have at its core a story that wants to be cozy for you, and the stakes are really low, and we will have very charming characters, and it's a story that it's not super long, and it's a happy book. Then Lies of Locke Lamora. It wasn't a favorite to me, but I still think that it's worth the read. It has the biggest heist at its core that you will see, and it has great family fun vibes. We move to Middle Game, which to me was fine. It's a story that you definitely need to read if you are enticed by alchemy, but I couldn't really connect with these characters. Then we have Mistborn, which it's definitely a favorite. It has the best hard magic system that I read, and even though I read this trilogy so many years ago, I'm still in love with everything that happened and remember these quite clearly, which is a very good sign. Then we have Mort by Terry Pratchett, which I think it's a fine read. I really liked it. I thought it was funny. Mort was charming, but at the same time he was not. However, it doesn't seem to me as something like quite phenomenal, but maybe if I read this all the time things will change. Then we have Throne of Glass by Sarah J Maas. This was the first thing that I read from her also ages ago, and I really like it. I'm not sure how would I feel now if I reread it, but it's a very comprehensive fantasy world where you have a great fantasy romance element, but there are different perspectives, and I think it's something really worth the read. Then Name of the Wind, we all know that I won't recommend. I'm not such a fan of Kvothe, he being an unreliable narrator. Also the story felt slightly slow, and I just want these to and I know lots of people loved it, so 100% give it a try because it is super widely popular for a reason. Then we have the Narnia Chronicles, and I think it's something really worth the read. I really enjoyed it. It's a middle grade series. It's not something that I will pick up now, but again, I believe that if you like this magic that feels like a classic and these characters that are good or evil, this is the book for you. Then we have Nettle and Bone, which is a standalone, and I really I believe it's worth the read. It is short, it is slightly dark but funny. We will follow different characters. There's this quest at its core, characters that are kind of like misfits. Really liked it. Then we have Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman, and this is probably my least favorite book from him that I've read. I think it's a fine book. It's a love song to London, and he has this ability to again create very vivid scenes, and they were great elements, but just not my favorite. Then we have The Ninth Reign, which is also a hidden gem, and I believe it's something 100% worth the read. It is probably not for everyone because it's a book that it's fairly character driven. The pace is slow, but we will have different perspectives, and the first book will try to put together what is happening in this world where it seems that a war is going to happen again, but they don't know how to defeat no one. Then The Ocean at the End of the Lane. It's something that it's a favorite to me. It will give you these vibes of being a child again and reliving stuff and having this sense of when you were a child and you believed that magic was real, you will feel it. It is so atmospheric. Another favorite is Strange the Dreamer. The main characters are cinnamon rolls. There are different types of magic involved. The stakes, whatever happened, it's also high and yeah, great. Then we have Piranesi, which, yes, it's a favorite. It's a story that I believe it's not, again, for everyone. The way in which Piranesi faces reality through the objectiveness, through the scientific method, and he tries to unravel what is happening to him, which is not easy. I found it deeply fascinating. Then we have Age of Myth, which sadly won't recommend. I DNF'd this. The premise seems great, which is around gods and humans, but then I couldn't really care for what was happening. But next we have The Poppy War, which it's a book that to me it's top. Loved it. It's a hard book. It's not for everyone. It really isn't. You will want things to happen differently. I had a very similar feeling to what I got while reading Song of Ice and Fire, when you see things that are unraveling and you're just like, no. Very war driven. Then we have The Cruel Prince, which is one of the most popular young adult fantasy series, and to me this is fine. It's a read that it has its highs and its lows. I think book 2, it's really great, but just it ended in a way that it didn't land. And it is also a story where Fae are not good people, and it's a really enemies to lovers, and it's a great enemies to lovers example. We have then Priory of the Orange Tree, which I am on the fence here. I'm not sure if it is worth the read or if it is fine. The world building was fascinating, this different points of view, but then how everything ended, I felt slightly disappointed, and that is what it's dragging me down to not put these into something higher. Then we move to Promise of Blood, which is the first book in the Powder Mages trilogy. I will add it into the worth the read side because I haven't concluded this trilogy, so I'm not sure if it will really land, but it is 100% worth the read. It has this different types of magic, this different perspective. It's political, it's war driven, it has great fantasy elements. I really enjoyed it. I really did. It's just a matter of me completing this series and finding what happens after, and then bumping this up throughout this list. Then we have Red Rising, which is a favorite. Just read the first trilogy and it's fantastic, phenomenal. It's a great story with this society that is deeply broken and how we are trying to infiltrate it from within and trying to break everything with great twists and plots, and there's so much drama. Then we have A Court of Thorns and Roses, which to me something again very worth the read. I think it's the ultimate fantasy romance. Then A River Enchanted, again something deeply worth the read. I want this to be a favorite. I really, really want this to be also in my top. I'm just waiting to more time to pass and see if I'm still feeling that way. But I think it's a book so cozy, so charming. It has beautiful scenes with creatures that are so unique. I fell in love with this story from the beginning. Then we have The Alloy of Law and overall the Mistborn Era 2 series, which I will add in worth the read. It's not something that it's a favorite to me, and it's funny, although it felt to me as a slightly watered down version from Mistborn Era 1 in terms of magic and also how the story was progressing. Then we have This Savage Song by B.E. Schwab, and I really like this. I think it's something 100% worth the read. Again, borderline favorite. The fact that violence breeds monsters and that we will have different types of monsters and one of those monsters can kill with magic, it just solves it. And I really hope that you can pick this book up. Then we have Stormlight Archive, which yes, is a top. It's a favorite, best thing that I've read. Characters that are charismatic, that are complex, that are nuanced, a story with the stakes that are high, a magic system that really evolves. Dance of Thieves, it's a very popular book on Book Talk. It is young adult duology, and I think it's fine. There's nothing wrong with this story. It's really easy to get into it, but overall the story, it just felt as if not forgettable. Then we continue with The Shadow of What Was Lost. I've only read the first book, but I believe it's something really worth the read. I found the premise fascinating, and also the magic system, the different points of view, who is good and who is bad, it's not really clear, and I really like how this story was written and the potential that it has. The Shadow of the Gods by John Wayne. I think it's a fine book. I found myself not really being able to connect with these different characters. Although the stakes were high, the Viking setting was really great, and it was a story that I consumed and that I enjoyed. Then we have Shadow of the Fox, which is an absolute favorite of mine. I think it's fantastic. It is so sweet. So great. We will have a grumpy sunshine trope with this feudal Japanese setting with a great quest at its core, and it feels like a video game, but it also has so much emotion and it just packed a punch to the heart. She Who Became the Sun, it's again a fine book. I really believe that you need to go with the expectations set right. This is a very war-driven book. It is not a Mulan retelling. It is something that really revolves around the strategy of the war. We have Six of Crows by Lee Berdugo, which is a favorite. I really believe this is a young adult duology that you cannot miss. It has a high studied score, but the dynamics between the characters are so complex, so great. Nothing is granted, nothing it's given. These characters will suffer and you will suffer with them. We have Small Miracles by Olivia Atwater. This book just won the SPFBO 8 prize, and I think it's worth the read. It is not a favorite, but it made me feel and it made me think, and I love that from this book. It just made me realize that we do have really great things in the small details, although it is pretty similar to Good Omens, so you can definitely see the inspiration there. Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, it's also a favorite. I deeply enjoyed these Achilles retelling where we will follow this story told by Patroclus, and he is just the best. In here you'll read a story that you know, but told from the perspective of someone that really loved and adored and was fascinated by Achilles, and everything changes under those lenses. Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson, it's also borderline favorite, honestly. I'll add it here. It is ridiculous but so atmospheric. I could not put this down. It is super plot driven, like incredibly so. But the dynamic between one of these wizards and his demon was so funny. I really liked the naivete of one of the characters, but then how witty others were. That combination, it really made my day. Then we have the Southern's Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, which again, I really believe it's worth the read. It is not for everyone because there are some scenes that I just cannot forget and I will never will, like why. It's funny and it has a mystery at its core. Then Spiderlight by Adrian Tchaikovsky, something really worth the read. It is underrated, so underrated. It has the best things of Kings of the Wild, and it really tops it. It has these different characters that are different archetypes, and each chapter is a story. It's kind of like Lord of the Rings, but if you put that story with a Dungeons and Dragons vibe. Then we have Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik, which again, worth the read. It is very wintry, atmospheric. We have this great blend between character and plot driven, leaning towards this character driven side, and it has different women perspectives facing improbable odds. Then Stardust, it's a favorite of mine. I love it. I love everything around this story. The book, the movie, it has a phenomenal portal fantasy. We'll follow a misfit doing a quest. We will have pirates. There's also going to be witches and a great character arc. We have The Starless Sea, which I won't recommend. It's a fine book, but it wasn't for me. It was very meta. Everything wrapped up in a way that I found myself like, what just happened? I'm not sure. Then we have Stormfront, so the Dresden Files, and I will give this a second chance, but what I've read so far, it's something that I won't recommend. I know Harry Dresden will change through time, but right now, what seems something really promising to me, which is this wizard, that it's a detective, it felt as something not quite as good and fairly predictable. Then Sword of Kagan, it is a top tier. Fell in love with this book from page 50 maybe. It is phenomenal. We will follow a mother and a son. We will have ice magic. We will have deeply complex family dynamics, and it will break your heart and it will make you see scenes that rival Sanderson. Then we have Temerary by Naomi Novik, and I think it's something worth the read if you are finding yourself wanting to read something that it's light, that it's funny, and that will give you How to Train Your Dragon vibes. The Martian, it's again a favorite, very similar to Project Hail Mary. It has the same traits. I fell in love with this book because how optimistic was the character coping with the situations. It's something that I want for my life. The Stardust Thief, it's something that I think it's fine. I really, really enjoyed it. It has this story of a girl and a gene, and they will be embarked in this quest in this Arabian setting. Then we have The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, which again, it's something that it was fine. I think that it's getting slightly overhyped. Then we have Vicious by B.E. Schwab, which is something really worth the read. It is creepy, it is weird. We will have these characters that are able to access magic if they'd had near-death experiences, and the story goes from there, but both characters are evil, and that's what really fascinated me. Then Warbreaker, a favorite. Loved it. It is a standalone from Sanderson. It has great magic, great different characters, stakes that are super high, a sentient sword, and things evolve in a way that you won't expect. I found this being political, religious, also slightly romantic. It had it all. And we conclude with The Wicked Deep, which is a young adult book by Shay Earnshaw. And I added here as a representation of all of her books, which I believe are really fine books. Books that are really atmospheric, that are usually creepy, are thrillers, and I think are fantastic if you want to get into this spooky mood. But it's not something that to me really changed my mind, my life forever, right? And these were all of the books that I had for you today. Let me know down below which were the ones that you agreed. Note, if you want to see a version of these that is solely focused on all of the young adult books that I read, or either all of the standalones that I've read, let me know and I will happy to do version 2 of these.